because we are facing so much fear from the external world. Like every time you're on the news, you're scrolling, you're seeing a lot of like negative things. Not only that, but like this is also for people like myself who deal with like health things. And so you may have fear and anxiety from dealing with health issues. Also, a lot of people are dealing with things like when it comes to like your job, like you may be scared because you may be like facing layoffs, or maybe you didn't get the promotion and you're just very in a frame of mind of fear. Yeah. So that's why I thought that it would be very important, because no matter who you are, you might be facing something like that. And so we just wanted to talk about it. And I wanted to just give a little background of how like I came to find Beth. So last year, as you all know, I am a breast cancer survivor, and I had to go through treatment for 2 years. And so last year was like kind of like my first year out of treatment. And so it is this idea that once a person is finished with treatment and, you know, their hair grows back and they look normal, everything is all good to go. But that's not the case, because, you know, you're so used to going to treatment and things like that every day, like not every day, but like continuously. And then when that's over with, it's like the parachute is taken away from you, right? And so it's like you're not doing those monthly check-ins anymore. So last year I faced that for the first time, where I kind of had like some anxiety, right? And it was mostly caused by being triggered by a lot of different things. I know last year, if you lived in New York City, it was a crazy time because we got that smog. And if you, remember
that? I forgot about that. Everything was yellow.
Yeah, and when you went outside, it looked like Blade Runner.
Oh gosh, I couldn't breathe.
And like that triggered me so bad because I was diagnosed with breast cancer and COVID, right? And so it was a very isolating event originally, and then I was diagnosed. And so when that happened, I think it triggered me, and I was just like, oh my God, what's happening? I hope like that we're not shut in again. And so I was triggered by that initially. And then I was feeling pains, and I'm like, okay, if it's not a normal pain, do I have to now tell my oncologist and things like that? So I had to get like a PET scan last year. So those were just a lot of things that had me heightened on anxiety and fear. And so I was just like, my mind was overthinking and things like that. And I so happened to be on social media, and I saw that Beth was hosting a class that really talked about evicting fear, and it was a 20-day challenge. And that is how I came to meet Beth. So as we are getting started, I'm just going to read Beth's bio really quickly. So Beth Brown is a Brooklyn-based entrepreneur who her mission across all of her businesses is to spread love and help others level up on their personal and professional lives, which is awesome. Beth is a breakthrough coach, speaker, and published author, and a Women Empowerment Award recipient. She's also the owner and CEO of Babs Photography, LLC. Hey. And she's also the founder of the Black Business Connector. So she's doing so many amazing things. And one thing I will say about Beth is that she is an amazing prayer partner. I remember I was like going through it, and I was like, I just need prayer. And you blessed me with the most amazing prayer. It was so helpful to me. And I'm so thankful for that today. So now that we know a little bit more about Beth, I would love for you, Beth, to talk about your business. Also, most importantly, about the two programs that you have to offer everyone if they're interested in taking the course. So I'll hand it over to you now.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Sen. That was quite an introduction. So thank you. And thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Zoe, for the compliment. So thank you, John. But yes, so I am a serial entrepreneur a bit. And I initially, my first business is a photography business. And what happened is I went through something, a physical trauma that was in 2016. And it was a sexual assault. And I felt all sorts of ways about my body as a result. Hey, Mel. And as a result of that, I had a lot of forgiveness issues towards myself that I didn't even realize I had yet at that point. And I thought the best way to get over and that situation was to pretend it away. So I tried to get to know someone new, and of course, as I always say, it was an absolute disaster. And I didn't want to be with myself. And I had all sorts of things that were going through my mind about myself as a woman. And I was not in a good place. So when he ended things with me on New Year's Eve, and was like, called me up and was like, yeah, we're not doing this anymore. I don't like you, never liked you. And I was like, so mad at him. But I always tell people what was the problem with what he said to me. I didn't want to be with myself. I didn't like myself. And I just learned something really fascinating about this energy field that we have around our heart that actually, I'm doing some research, so I don't want to go too far into it, but it can, like, the energy around our heart, the electromagnetic field around our heart can actually like go out quite a long distance. And so I was at that time not realizing it. And I'm going to dive in some more research on this, so I don't want to go too much into it, but I was really putting all that loathing and self-hatred out. There was like literally no chance of him ever liking me or anyone liking me. Um, and I used photography as one of the tools eventually, not right away, eventually starting in 2018. God led me through these different steps. Like, I am a recovering perfectionist. So anyone who's ever been a perfectionist, you know how that can go with the self-talk. And then you add trauma and issues with your body and issues with your past to that. And it's just like really magnified and awful. So I was like, God, I don't really know what to do. And so he started telling me step by step. I felt like he was leading me through different things. And in 2018, I felt like he was saying to start photographing myself. So I started using photography to see myself, my body in particular, in a new light. And then as a result, all of this, once like 2020 came, ironically, even though the world was falling apart, my life was actually improving because I had let go of a lot of the forgiveness issues. In fact, all of the forgiveness issues. Hey, Mark. And but the other thing is I had let go of a lot of the fear, because fear and unforgiveness go very closely together. They're kind of like little trauma partners.
Yeah.
Yeah, fear and unforgiveness are really like best friends for awfulness. And we don't want them hanging around forever. You don't want them as your BFF. So, yeah, I created a couple journals based on the things that I went through and I learned, and do some coaching as well. And then you actually were in the pilot group for the Evict Fear. So yeah, when you reached out and said, let's chat, I was like, oh my gosh. And she was the first person to go through it.
Yeah. I remember when I signed up to do it, and it just so happened that I did the pilot program, and then there was another woman who I knew through a mutual friend, right? And we were both taking it together. So it was just a very divine moment.
Yeah,
And I felt like I know that a lot of the Evict Fear program is based around really like faith, right? And
it
like,
is. Yes.
yeah, and like that is like one way when we're faced with fear, how we overcome it, right? Because in the word, you hear it over and over. The word is like hearing the word will increase your faith. And
Yes.
so that was one thing that I loved about the Evict Fear program. So yeah, I'm just excited just to talk a little bit more about that. And hopefully if anyone is on tonight, and they're interested in signing up for the 20-day challenge, it's a very easy program. You just do a couple things every day, and I can let Beth talk a little bit more about it.
Yes.
But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, ironically, I'm having another 4-day challenge, and it's coming up June 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th. So if you want the link, all you have to do is just send me a DM and I'll send you the registration link. It's free. And I do go through, it's great for business people, but it's great for anyone. Even someone who's just stuck in life, and it's not like you're going through a crisis moment or anything, but maybe you're feeling a little bit stuck. Because we also, FOMO can be a really real thing too, like fear of missing out in life, or fear of like coming to the end of your life and not having lived your purpose, right? So even in that sense, hey, Morgan, even in that sense, it's like great for just like organizing and getting some focus and some traction to like begin launching forward. But people who have like a health crisis or a financial crisis or something like that, it's also a really great challenge because of, I don't want to give it away. I want people to actually come to it. But yeah, it's like a really great way to get traction and start building momentum to go in the direction that you want to go. And um, do it, I don't want to say fearlessly, but getting to the root of our problems really is what we're doing, is we're getting to the root of our problems and figuring out how to use God's word, because God's word is alive and active, like a two-edged sword. It is alive. It will cut things out. And so like really, part of it is spiritual warfare. We are spiritual beings. Whatever happens in the spirit realm happens first before it happens in the real world. You don't have to believe it. Doesn't matter. At one point people believed the earth was flat. It didn't mean it was round. Like it was round, but you can believe what you want. But the spirit world is where everything happens first. So we have to actually use God's word. From all my studies and my research and everything and my experiences, that's like a great way to get to the root of our problems and begin moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think when I took the class, there was a lot of things that I was forgetting, I was forgetting how powerful I was, and being a child of God, right? And even, I'll put this out there, like, even if you are not a Christian, this class can still be
Yes.
beneficial to you, because I think faith is like the thing that really pushes us through, right? Like
Yeah.
I went through a breast cancer diagnosis, and I know, like, when I was initially diagnosed, I was like, I am healed. I found all the scriptures on healing, and
Yes.
I took all those scriptures and I put them on note cards, and I read them on the way in the chemo rooms. When I was in those rooms by myself, like the MRI rooms, I had to go through chemo in rooms alone because it was during COVID, but it was no one there but me and God, right?
Yeah.
And like me having to remember those scriptures, right? And that's what really got me through. But as when you're in that mode, you're like super focused. But then there's time when you're not surrounded by the word or your
Yeah.
faith, and you have to like refresh up, right? So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
So I'm gonna go ahead and start getting into some questions. So
Sure.
I know that this is a very formal or informal conversation. So we can start the questions, and if anyone has any questions that you want to ask Beth or I,
Yeah.
feel free to add them in the comments, and we'll answer your questions as well.
Yes,
So one
please.
question that I have that maybe most of us can relate to is, how do we navigate fear with external factors that are going on, such as like societal expectations, cultural norms, or just like the current like huge contributors to fears and anxieties that are going on in the world today? And for example, I mean, like, Okay, I'm 41.
Okay.
I know I don't look
No,
it.
you don't.
but
Like
but I'm
31?
not right. But I'm
Yes.
not married and I don't have children. And you know, the society would say like, okay, I should be married, I should have children. So like those are things
Yeah.
that some of us face where we're like, man, you know, that hasn't happened for me yet. Or even external things like we live in New York City, which has been kind of cray right now. So it's like, you know, we're all dealing with those external factors. So how do we navigate fear, like with things that are not in our
Yeah.
control, but more external?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really great question. And I'm so glad you asked it because I do think it's a common question. I would say the very first thing to do is to do an audit. I call it an audit. And you look at, you can either do it in your brain, but it's better, I think, if you write it out, like in a list. Like you can make, I used to be a teacher, so that's actually my coaching style. I teach tools. You can do things in my control, things not in my control. What can't you control? You can write it all down. And hey, welcome. And then the things that are in your control, what can you control? Write those all down. And that's what you focus on. The things that you can't control, right? For example, we live in New York City. Apparently, New York City is the worst place to live if you do want to get married. But people get married every day in New York City. So I do not buy that. So I'm not going to look at that. But we were talking about prayer earlier today, and I do believe that we can go to God about anything, and we use God's word. So I look at what I can't control, and I'm like, you know what, God? Okay, here's the deal. But you did say it is not good for man to be alone. So, you know, my husband is not good for him to be without me. You don't want my husband to be without me. Come on, God, I know you love him. So let's get him to me. So, and then I can't really control the rest of it. But things that I can control, like they're really like weird factors that are out there, right? But the things that I can control is I can be seen, I can show up places, I can go out. Does it mean I'm going to meet my husband when I go out? Not necessarily, but maybe. You know what I'm saying? Like you just keep opportunity open. I think as Christian women, I'm starting to get a little bit off topic
No,
because now I'm
no.
going into dating.
We need to hear
But
this.
I mean, we all love, right?
And
But I
men and women need to hear this.
and then women need to hear this. But people who've gone to church, they have like some really toxic things that I do not subscribe to. That aren't even biblical. Like, where in the Bible is it saying these things? Like, it. I think people have taken things like a man who finds a wife finds a good thing and like twisted it, meaning, hey Susanna, like the woman, hey Kim, the woman it shouldn't be approaching men, you know, or like you don't want to smile too much at church. Like, why don't I want to smile at church? No, I'm not saying you're gonna meet someone at church because I've, you know, but you know, you leave it open. The things that you can control are that you leave your options open and you like judge people as they come to you. The best person for you might not be found in church. He might be found at a museum or in line at the grocery store. Who knows? Like, I don't know where your husband or, you know, would be, but you literally make yourself available. You talk. You can initiate as a woman a conversation. It doesn't mean you're forward. Ruth went and she laid down at Boaz's feet. She
Yeah.
like went to the man. Like her mother-in-law like instructed her to go and lay at his feet. But churches have been teaching women to kind of like hide themselves, yet they're like, you should get married. What? So um what the other thing is what's in our control is what we learn. There's what our culture teaches us, what the church teaches us, what the schools teach us, what our family teaches us, what our society teaches us. And it goes by country by country by country. It goes by family by family. It goes by like if I live in this like if I went to school in Flatbush, Brooklyn, or if I went to school in like upstate New York. I grew up in Sydney, in this small town, right? You know, the schools, like the things that are taught, it's all different. There's not anything standard. So people are like, oh, your truth, my truth. Well, there's got to be one solid truth. Otherwise, like, we're all in limbo. I disagree with your truth versus my truth. Like, we have different perspectives,
Yeah.
but like, truth is truth. And so, like, what's my identity? What's your identity? What does God say about me? Who does God say I am? And that's what we can control. We can control by building our identity on something that does not change. And that's why I do like using the Bible, and why even people who may not be Christian and come from different faith backgrounds can still benefit from, you know, the challenge from my journals. I've even, you know, done the coaching program with people who are not faith, you know, Christian faith, because God is still God, and he's the one true God. He's got his own ideas about who you are and me, and it doesn't change. And it's like, it's fixed. It's not up and down based on whether the economy is good or bad. It's not up and down based on like what someone's body shape is supposed to be like. It's not like, you know, it's not based on anything. And whether we're married or single or divorced or widowed or anything else in a situationship, God still has, you know what I'm saying? It's like a standard. So we kind of focus in and begin building our identity and our self-image, and we literally shift our perspective off of the roller coaster of what everyone else is telling us, including our family. And our family may be like, our mom may be, oh, you not married yet? Oh, when you getting married? Like, oh, like, you didn't bring your boo to the picnic? Why? You know what? Maybe if I don't want him being under a
Yeah.
microscope. So, you know, you set a standard, you find something stable to build your identity and build your life on.
And one thing, I like what you said when you said God is God, right? And like it doesn't change, right? So like no matter what, and this is like beyond like the dating, there's a lot of external factors, right? It's no secret that like we're in an election year. There's no secret that like we're in inflation. We faced a recession in like 2008. Like I bought a condo around that time, and then like everything tanked. From personal experience, I can tell you, like, I quit a job walking on faith with a mortgage, went back to grad school, did not know how I was going to pay, but it was such a stressful environment. I remember talking to God and saying, I can't do this anymore. My mom had just gotten sick, and I was like on autopilot. It was so much stress, so much anxiety. And God, I remember I was in this stressful job. I was working from 8 in the morning to 11 at night, Monday through Friday. Then they wanted me to come in on the weekends. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't maintain this anymore. And God told me, he said, I got off the train. I was like to the doors of the job. And he was like, if you didn't have to work and go into that door today and you just walk down the street, how would you feel? And I was like, I feel relieved. And he said, you know what? If you step out on faith, I will take care of everything.
Yeah.
And I didn't quit right away. I thought about it. It all worked. It all figured itself out. Where I ended up going back to get my master's full time. And for 2 years, like I saved up enough money, and for 2 years, I never missed a mortgage payment. I didn't work a full-time job. I had support in terms of going back to school and things like that. And then I also found work. But the one thing I'll say is that God was true. Even in a recession, 2008, 2000, this happened like 2009, 2010. It was the most scariest time. I was, very young, and a lot of stuff was going on, and I had to trust. I
Yeah.
had to trust God. And that really, for me, to your point, was like, he is always, that's the truth, right?
Yeah.
No matter what is going on in the world, like he will sustain you,
Yes.
Also having that faith, he will sustain you.
Yes.
So with that said, can you also share a personal experience? Because I know this is kind of how
Yeah.
things came about for you as well. Can you share a personal experience where, you know, that a specific external factor may have fueled your fear, and how did you overcome it?
Yes, actually, it's so funny because I wanted to add something to what you just said, but the question you just asked me kind of goes with that.
Good, good.
So, what you did that made you successful in like evicting the fear in the situation, which was legitimately a unnerving situation. You had every right to be concerned. Like it would be normal. It would be weird if you had not been concerned at all about, well, you know, here's all these problems. Now I just left my job and how's this going to work? But what you did was you had your focus and your trust. It was not misplaced. Your trust and focus, you put it on something stable, on God, and who does promise. He makes a whole lot of promises about keeping his people. The fear came about because I lost my job due to discrimination almost 3 years ago now. In October of this year, it would be 3 years. So it's like a little over 2.5 years, almost 3 years. Yeah. And what I did was I did a little bit of what I was talking about earlier. I did an audit. This is what I can control. This is what I can't control. These are the things I can control. Let's see how I can take care of each one. And what I realized was, and I think this is a case for a lot of people, hey Marishi, is that we a lot of times trust and our faith is in our job, as the job being, or an employer being our provider. A lot of times medically, like you were talking about the cancer diagnosis, our focus, and we misplace our trust again and we put it on the doctor and the doctor's news. Who's the doctor? He's just a tool that is used, or she is just a tool that is used to support us. But they do not have the final word. They don't have any say really about what happens. You know, like doctors are wrong every day. So, um, anything like the recession, like, or the inflation right now. Where is your, yes, only God. Hey, Adrian. So people, when their trust is misplaced, which is what I realized, is I'd had my trust on my employer for my paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
Now I had an advantage in this whole situation that I had previously done 3 years of healing from a traumatic experience. So I had a lot of tools already in place for like managing mindset and for like knowing how to fight back in the spiritual world and just like, you know, manage everything so that I wouldn't go out of control. And then my best friend was like, Beth, I'm worried about you. And I was like, it will be fine. And she was like, no, I'm worried about you. And I thought she meant financially. And of course she did. But she was worried because I was calm. She was like, I think you should be a little bit more upset. It's not going to help me. And so the journal, the Evict Fear, and the workshop that I teach are things that I had put kind of in place from like the 3 years of healing, but then I had added on to after losing my job to the discrimination of my former employer. So yeah, um, getting rid of misplaced trust and repositioning our trust on something stable who guarantees that he will take care of us, aka God, is a great way to go, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think when we go through like layoffs, I've been I've walked away from jobs. I've been laid off in New York City
Mm.
before as well, and I think that those moments sometimes can be very scary because we
Mm-hmm.
have like the highest rents, right?
Oh
Um,
gosh, it's high.
so it's like, what am I, what am I gonna do? And like, I just remember I got laid off like when I first moved to New York. The company that I got into, it was a company that I had like hoped and prayed for. I finally got in, and then they like went bankrupt. Like not when I got laid off, but like a couple years later. So I was
Oh,
like, oh,
okay.
I understand. But I was like, does this mean that I'm going back to Chicago, I was like, I cannot go back to Chicago. So from the previous experience, when I walked away when I was in grad school, I started to dig back into my faith. And one
Mm-hmm.
thing that I did do, because at the time I didn't have a New York driver's license, right? So I went to the DMV and I was like, I'm getting a driver's license because I'm staying here.
Yes.
I was like, they said, like, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. And I'm like, baby,
Yes.
I'm making it. So I went and got that driver's license. Big cheesy smile, like, I'm here.
I love it.
I'm here to
I
stay.
love it.
And you know, within like a month or so, I was able to secure a job, because in my industry, it's so competitive here. It's like very easy to, you know, kind of to find employment, you know, if something were to happen. So that's the great thing about
Yeah.
New York. But I stayed in that faith, because sometimes when you're faced with that, you could make that choice. Like you said, you have all these choices, and I could have been like, well, I'm just gonna go home. I'm just gonna, like, you know, I'm done with this. Like, but moving in faith. I've been here now for a decade, right? I've been here so
Yes.
long. People are like, you can be a New Yorker now. I'm like, okay, thank you.
Yes, you can.
So with that being said, I know we talked about some of the things that led you here. I want to know, like, what strategies do you use to distinguish between rational concerns and irrational fears when faced with external things? So, like, for me right now, um, like, rational things is like, okay, um, I don't know, like, it's inflated, right? So, like, I have to be aware of what I'm spending, right? Or
Mhm.
some irrational things is like, we've been having a lot of talk about, like, the safety, like on the trains and things like that, and I've had like a little anxiety around that. But like, you can start having those irrational fears, right? So
Yes.
how do you distinguish between, you know, what's really real and what's like irrational?
Well, I think rational can become irrational if we let our minds go. So I think it's important to know that, for example, train safety is like a real thing. So I don't know. You might want to get some pepper spray. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like, it's,
I, I
it's a thing. But once I've taken control and done something, I have these rings and they're really cute, but they do stick out. And I'll be honest, it's fashion, but I will
it's,
take your eye out if I have to. It's going to be you, not me. I mean, it is what it is. So I'm not going to live in fear, but I am. It's, there are certain things, and we have to acknowledge it. And I think that sometimes, like, the wellness industry does weird things of like, oh, let's just pretend and only have positive thoughts. Well, you know what? If everything was really positive thoughts only, then nothing bad would happen. And God says that because there's sin in the world, sin is what opened up the bad things. And so until Jesus comes back and everything's like done, like that's it, we're gonna have bad things happen. So, but not allow our minds to go. We do have to get control of our minds. I think the strategy that you used, a couple strategies, hey Nicolette, um, you used a couple strategies. You were talking about like when you were going for your treatments, like in the car, going there, in the testing, and during like the treatments that you were taking. You had cards. You had cards that you'd written out, promises God made to you on healing. Hey, Ams. So you were focusing your mind. So you could have sat there and thought all these crazy things, but you chose to sit there and focus and use God's word as medicine in addition to the medicine that you were also receiving. So you were like giving yourself double doses. You were like double treating yourself because you were also treating your mind. You talked about when you lost your job and you were like, I don't want to go back to Chicago. What now? Well, it seems a little irrational, but you went and you got a driver's license. You were like, no, I'm going to have like, so sometimes it's like doing something that's bold, like going out on a limb and doing something, and whether it's like, going and getting a driver's license, or you lose your job. So you're like, well, I'm just going to start a new business. And yeah, it's going to take literally everything that I have. And it seems a little bit crazy to people when you literally empty your bank accounts and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have a penny left. And then you go into your life insurance. I've done some like really out there things. My parents are like, what is wrong with you, Beth? But you have to do it because you have to, like, I mean, you know, if that's where you feel like it's the right way for you to go. But you know, sometimes it doesn't make sense to other people, but you have to, you know, just go for it. You either go all in or don't bother at all. And that's that. And then and use wisdom. You know, we can ask God for wisdom. So like, how can I do this? You know, do it with wisdom. Whatever you're doing, do it with wisdom, but go all in and don't just halfway. When you're halfway trying to do something, if you're trying to get married, don't halfway try to get married. Then you're going to have a halfway marriage and it's probably going to end up in divorce. If you're trying to start a business, go all in. Like, that's it. Like, if you go all in, your energy and your focus is all in. You're not halfway out. Oh, sorry, there's a fly that just walked in, flew by me. In fact, actually, the Bible says a double-minded man receives nothing. So if you're halfway in to your business, you're halfway in. If you've received a health diagnosis recently and you're halfway into like pursuing a treatment and you're and getting better, or halfway out, you're not going to get better because you're like not all in. So literally you have to put it all in, and then your energy is kind of like propelling you forward, and your mind has something to focus on that's not going to go out of control. And you might be like, ooh, that didn't look good
Yeah.
at certain times, and acknowledge it and take a pause, but you have to do it. just just go for it.
Yeah. And that's a great setup in terms of like the health journey. So in terms of my health journey, I went through 2 years of cancer treatment. So I remember just being like, man, I had to do post treatment, which added on sometime. And I just remember like the first half, I was just like, man, is this ever gonna be over with, you know?
Mm,
And then when I started, when I got done, when I thought I was done, I had to do post treatment. So I had to do chemo pills, I had to do immunotherapy, and it came with all uh type of like things that could happen, right? And most of the things that they told me could happen ended up happening. And it all ended up happening around the same time
oh,
that I was like going through a lot of stuff, right? So I was just like, oh my God, this is like the most intense thing. And so in order for me to keep pushing forward, I had to trust, right? I had to trust that this was the right step. I had to pray on it. I had to really move forward, right? But at the same time, it was a lot, right? I was dealing with my own grief of like what I was going through. I was 37, 38 at the time. So just think about like someone telling you for the whole year that you're 38, like it's a wrap. Like you're
yeah,
gonna be in treatment. Like all this
yeah,
stuff is gonna happen to you. So I'm like, wait a minute. So the rest of my 30s like is over, you know? And I was just so depleted. I was like working still. I was going to chemo like on a Monday, having to be back at work full time because I need my insurance. I need to
right,
make the
yeah,
to make, and I was just like, man, like this is a lot, right? And then I had my breaking point when my mom passed away on my birthday. And I was just like, oh, I was like, you know what? I was like, this, I can't do it no more. I was like, I cannot take not another thing. So I just remember like either at that moment I could have gave up, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I was intense grief, right?
Yeah.
Around the time my mom died, I found that my liver was like spiking. I had thyroid issues that I didn't even know about. So I was just like, this is so much. I was so overwhelmed. And sometimes you get to that point where you get so knocked down and it's nothing else that you can lean on but like that faith, right?
Yeah.
And that is what pushed me forward, right? It's like having that strong faith. And I just remember one other special thing about faith is like it provides you with hope.
It does.
So even even
Yes.
in that murky, like, man, there's no way out of this. I was like, well, let me visualize what I want my next year to look like, because all this happened like in 21, right? So I was like, in 2022, this is who I want to be. I don't have no hair right now, but I want to have long hair. I want to wear the most beautiful clothes. I want to travel. Like, I'm doing all the things. I was like, I'm not going to be laying in the bed crying all the time, every day. I'm doing all the things. So that's what I did. I said, I bought a really beautiful dress, and a friend of mine was like, I'll do a photo shoot for you. And I said, okay. So once I got that photo shoot, which is actually my profile photo, right? I said, this is who, if you can see that, I was like, this is who I'm going to be this year. And I'm going to step into that. And that is how my year is going to be. So that was one way for me. Like if you're so deep in like the darkness and
Yeah.
and you don't see a way out, you can actually visualize
Yes.
what that can look like and what like that hope can look like for yourself.
Yes.
So I know I've
Oh,
talked a lot.
no, that
Um,
was really good. I actually wanted to ask you a little bit more about that. So it's very easy. So I wanted to talk about self-compassion, right? It's very easy for self-compassion and self-pity to like kind of like the self-compassion to like go right into pity, and then the next thing you know, it's like feeling sorry for yourself and whatnot. How did you use self-compassion? Because it sounds like you did a little bit.
yeah, well, I
To
was
and how did you keep from going down the other side of it
well,
into an empowering side?
yeah, well, I feel like for me, like I'm a very motivated person, right? But you can't be motivated when you're going through, some of those times. So I gave myself a lot of compassion. There were moments when after my mom passed away, when I had to the hardest part was I buried my mom on a Saturday. I flew back to New York on a Sunday, and I had to be in immunotherapy on a Monday, and then I had to work on Tuesday, right? So
Wow.
I was just like, this is so much. I called off that Tuesday. I was like, no, I'm not doing this no more. I have to like have compassion for
Yes.
myself. And even in the weeks after that, when I had to go to like doctor's appointments and stuff, I just cried. And I was like, I'm not holding this in anymore. So you have to acknowledge like this is a lot
Yeah.
and I have to release, right? So I think
Yeah.
that is a part of giving yourself compassion, like accepting like what it is that you're going through. And then just being like, you can cry. You can actually
Yeah.
be upset about this.
Yes.
But at the same time, we're not going to stay here. Um, we're going to give you time and room to heal, but we're not going to stay here
Yeah.
because life, you know, is so much more than what you're going through. And I know like one key thing that like stuck with me and I don't know if it was a pastor who said it, but like I wrote it on a note card, and it's your purpose is greater than your circumstances. And when
Yeah.
that, I was like, okay. Even today, when I'm going through things, I'm like, oh, this is a lot. It's like, wait, you have to look at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Your purpose is way greater than your current circumstances.
Yeah. 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 And sometimes we need someone to support us to see that bigger picture. And sometimes we can like figure out that bigger picture on our own. Sometimes self-motivate, and sometimes we do need like a friend or a journal or whatever it is to like come along and partner with us to like help us. Yeah, I love that what you're speaking about of purpose. Like when we don't have purpose, I think in general, even people who like worked all their lives and they're like, oh, now I'm going to retire and I'm going to live the good life. They tend to not live very long versus the people who retire and then they start a business, or they're like really into like doing philanthropy or volunteering, or, you know, like my grandmother, when she retired, she got involved in the community center. She was like going, she got herself a boyfriend. They were going on dates. she was she
She was
refused to
lit-
marry him, but you know, like you have to keep going, and if you don't keep going, like that's kind of it. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I know we have like 10 minutes left. So I wanted to talk about more along the lines of like the future, right? Because I feel like a lot of anxiety comes from thinking about the future. So how do unaccomplished goals contribute to our fears about the
Yeah.
future? How can we reframe them to empower ourselves?
Yeah. Huh. So, gosh, I feel like there's so many different ways I could go with this. So, I feel like some of it is our the way we talk about the future. Um, we're like, we actually give ourselves an anxiety, I think, that we don't have to give ourselves. So, if I'm saying like, someday I'm going to, there's no date. And now I'm anxious all the time because I haven't noted when someday is. So it's uncertain. I think humans, we don't really like uncertainty so much. Someday is an uncertain date, and someday will never come because like you're never doing it. And so you're living for like ever, potentially, from like age 20 to like age 90, potentially, of saying someday I'm going to go to Peru. Someday I'm going to write a book. Someday I'm going to get in shape. Someday I'm gonna, whatever it is, give it a date. So we have to like order things. And so that thing that you want to do, and this is actually one of the things that we do in the Evict Fear workshop or challenge that I'm going to be teaching next week, is you pick a date. Whatever that someday thing is, you pick a date. And then you go through it one day at a time. So you give yourself the compassion, you give yourself the grace, you forgive yourself if you miss the date, of course, and you don't get it started. Say you gave yourself the date of, I don't know, by June 15th, I'm going to start writing my book, right? Maybe you don't write it on June 15th because something unexpected comes up and you don't have time. That's fine. June 16th, you just move it. June 16th, you write a paragraph and good. Now you feel like you've accomplished something. And you don't have that thing over your head of like, oh my gosh, I'm not getting what I need to get done. Like you have to commit. That alleviates the fear. Now, you might be like, what if I don't finish? I start things all the time and I don't finish. Well, you know, you get your buddy, your accountability buddy. You again, I go through this also in the workshop. You can plan it out, and even in like my coaching program, like, you know, how am I going to do this and this and this? I'm not a I am a breakthrough coach. I'm not a life coach. That almost sounded like life coaching, but it's kind of similar. But you're literally ordering things and you're putting things in order. Um, and then you're making a plan and you're going it day by day. So you don't have to worry about like what 10 years looks like. You can have a general idea. It's great to have a vision for where you want to go in 10 years or 20 years or 10 months, but focus on it day by day and mind your own business. business. Stop minding other people's business. Literally mind your business. I don't know about anyone else, but I can speak for myself. I am a full-time job.
Yeah. I like
Keeping track of myself is a full-time job. I don't need to be minding someone else's business.
I like to mind your business. I did like a 5-day fast, and it was very helpful because I did like a fast from social media, so I wasn't really in other people's business. It felt pretty good because I could focus up. So I definitely agree in terms of that. And setting goals is so important. So I definitely am on to that. Like I'm a huge goal setter. So yeah. So I know we're almost close to time. So I wanted to thank everyone who joined the IG Live. Thank you so much. And I hope that you all learned something today, and how you can use some tools and resources to evict fear. I also want to thank Beth for coming on tonight, and sharing her story, as well as some really great tips on how to evict fear. And if you want to just leave any comments or anything like that, or DM myself or Beth, and learn more about her 2 programs, the Evict Fear program and also the journal, you can feel free to DM her to get more information. Anything else that you wanted to add, Beth?
Um, yeah, I feel like being quiet is something that builds fear. It becomes the elephant in the room.
Mm.
And that was the thing that uh in my initial issue that I went through with the sexual assault, I was quiet. I didn't talk about it at all. I didn't even talk to God about it. And it became bigger in my mind of a shame, of a problem. Hey, Coda. Than it needed to be. I didn't need to see myself as harshly as I was seeing myself, because I was being quiet. You don't need to tell the whole world. Maybe at some point you are meant to tell your story, like you definitely tell your story now. I don't think you were telling your whole story. Maybe, oh, I didn't know you back then, but
Yeah.
I don't know that you were telling your whole story moment by moment, when you were going through things, but get it out.
Yeah.
Even if you just like journal it. Journaling is one way to get things out. I wasn't even journaling. I was like literally I was silent. And so don't be quiet. Healing is noisy. You were talking about crying. You were at the doctor's office and you were crying. You were noisy. Your doctor, it didn't matter what your doctor thought or if you were taking up extra time at the doctor's office. Sometimes we think oh my gosh, I don't want to take up this person's time because my doctor doesn't want to have to deal with me. The doctor's got other people to see. And yes, he or she does have other people to see. You've got to get it out. So I think when we're quiet, it becomes poison to us. And then we don't forgive ourselves. We don't forgive other people. Things like get big in our heads. We've got fear now going through us. Like I'm quiet about my goals. That's one reason why we set a date and we take someday and put it into like a actual date and like make it a commitment, because then it's no longer this silent thing that's like holding itself over our head. So healing is noisy, even if it's just like you having ugly cries. A friend of mine says like ugly tears. She'll be like, and I had an ugly cry. Even if it's an ugly cry, you're getting it out. You have to get it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I feel like I did originally, I wasn't going to tell anyone about my diagnosis, and I'm the oldest of 6 kids. So I didn't really know how to tell everyone. So I had to make those phone calls to share. And then I was working on a campaign like at my job, and I was like around breast cancer, and I was like, I have to talk about this because I'll be able to help so many women, especially women of color who really face more disparities and things like that, and are not even aware. So to your point, I think sometimes it can be healing to share and to share your journey. And for me, it was very healing, very therapeutic. Even today, because I've shared so much, I know a lot of people will tap into me because I have the resources. I've been through it before. And I think that could also be healing too. And you think about it, like in the way that we live in the world, it's like, it's not just us, right? And there's always someone after you who's going to go through something, whether it's job loss or breast cancer diagnosis or whatever, that you can, like, you're supposed to be that lifeline to like help them. So I agree with that. So thank you for adding that.
You're welcome.
Yes,
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Well, I know it's 7:58, so we can wrap it up. But I am so thankful having you on, and hopefully we can do another one of these later
Yes.
on. Yeah,
I'd love to. This was so much fun. Thank you again. Like I said, it's really because you went through the pilot program for Evict Fear and the pilot challenge and everything, and then it's been a year
yeah,
so since that piloted. So yeah, the fact that like even the pilot was so impactful in supporting you and helping you get to the root of things that were bothering you so that you could be more confident and bold and comfortable in life. I am so grateful. It's like made my day.
yeah. Well, thank you so much. I greatly, like I said, I greatly appreciated going through that, and I appreciated the live sessions. Those are really great because like there was like an accountability, like a partner to do things with. So yeah, I definitely recommend it if anyone is interested in joining, and I'm glad that you're having it coming up soon. So
Yes, yes. Just send me a message, DM me, and I'll send you the register. It's virtual, so it's on Zoom, so you could literally be anywhere in the world.
yeah,
You could be in Peru. I've said Peru a couple times. Maybe maybe that means I need to go visit. But anyway, you could be anywhere in the world and you could still join us. So yeah.
awesome. Well, all right. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so
Good
much for
night.
joining, and hopefully we'll be back soon with another one.
Yes, thank you, Sen. Thank
All
you,
right.
everyone. Good night.
Bye.